So right now I'm going to bring down my good friend, Tomris Laffly, who will be the moderator, critic and journalist, and she'll introduce our guest tonight.
Hi everyone. So first of all, I'm wondering who here has already seen Florida Project? All right, so quite a number of you who haven't seen it, you're in for a treat. It opens in New York and LA on Friday, so go support this wonderful film in its opening weekend. So Florida Project is a really joyous, exuberant film. It's full of a childlike sense of adventure, but at the same time, it's also a deeply poignant film grounded in some really harsh social and economic truths about America. So please join me in welcoming our guests tonight. Shaun Baker, writer, director, producer, and editor. Chris Bergoch, writer and producer. And also Samantha, Quan, associate producer. So I want to start with a basic question. I just want to know how the three of you got together from the beginning for your creative partnership, not just for Florida Project, but for your other work as well.
I'll start. Okay, Chris and I, our relationship goes all the way back to NYU. We met there. We've been working on and off again throughout the years, but we actually co-wrote the last 3 features that I directed, Starlet, Tangerine, and now the Florida Project. So yeah, right? Yeah. You want to talk more?
No, Shaun and I met at NYU here and grew up kind of going to see films at the New York Film Festival and just, dreaming one day that we would be part of it, and worked on each other's student films back then, borrowed each other's equipment because you always had the equipment for a certain amount of time, and we were working on an MTV show in 2010 that got canceled, and it wasn't a good match for MTV, but that was the blessing in disguise because that led to Starlet, and then we came up with the idea for the Florida Project right around that time, and it was something we've been trying to get going ever since.
And just really quick, Samantha Quan is the acting coach on the Florida Project and works so closely with the children, and I thought that might be part of our discussion. You might want to hear how we directed the kids, and that's why I asked Sam to join us tonight. So, Sam, do you want to talk about it? Whoa.
Oh yeah, I'm a trained actor. I went to NYU grad actually, and I also taught kids. So I taught the kids and the first timers on this film.
So the previous projects that you wrote together, you were talking about Tangerine and Starlet. They're LA films, and you made some New York films. So Florida is a new world. So I'm wondering how you entered this world, and how did this topic of motels, kind of a stone throws away from Disneyland, Disney World, come to your attention?
Well, Chris brought this world to my attention. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't even know that there was an issue of the hidden homeless in our country. And Chris brought me a number of articles, news articles, that were focusing on the situation in Kissimmee and Orlando. And why don't you tell me?
Yeah, but I should be honest too, I wasn't familiar with this going on myself until my mom actually, is that good? Is that good to lean? My mom moved down to Orlando, and so when I would make visits down there to see her, drive across that US 192 that you see in the film, and seeing kids playing on the, in the motel parking lots, kind of intrigued me because they didn't look like tourists, and I was just wondering what was going on there, because they seemed to be doing everything that I did as a kid, playing wiffle ball, playing hide and seek, but it was in the motel parking lot, and so it kind of led me into to sort of, figuring out that they live there, and doing some research and bringing it to Shaun, saying like, I think there's a very good story here for a Shaun Baker film.
I started reading more articles about it, and it was actually that juxtaposition of children growing up in these motels, in these budget motels, technically homeless because their families could not secure permanent housing, right outside the happiest place on earth for children. So there was that drew me in. And I've always wanted to make a film sort of, about children. I've been very inspired and influenced by the Little Rascals my entire career. I mean, you'll see winks throughout every film I've made at Our Gang, and Hal Roach is just wonderful. I think what Hal Roach achieved almost 70 years ago with child performances hasn't been matched many times since. And if you think about what the Little Rascals actually was, they were these comic shorts that were set against the Great Depression. Most of the characters in the Little Rascals were living in poverty, but the focus was the joyous nature of children, what makes the universality of childhood, and focusing on the comedic adventures of children, and I thought that was special. I thought that was very much ahead of its time. When I was watching these shorts growing up, they would play on New York television, so I saw them after school. But at the time, they were entertainment when I was 7, 8, 9 years old. When I revisited them later in life, I realized, wow, this is actually a very interesting approach to this, and so I always wanted to do something like this. And so when he brought this topic to my attention, I thought this might be our opportunity to make a sort of a present day Little Rascals. Yeah.
And I want to follow up on something you said, that this material felt to you like a good Shaun Baker film material. And I felt the same way, because you are clearly very interested in people who are living on the fringes of society, people that we kind of see but maybe ignore, or we don't really know a lot about. So did you think about the film this way, that it kind of fit into your filmmaking sensibilities in a way?
To a certain degree. I think when we're going into these films, it's more about topics that interest us, locations that we feel have not been shown in films, or groups of people, subcultures that are underrepresented on screen. I think our films are responses to what we're not seeing enough of. It's not that they don't exist out there, obviously, but I don't see a lot of it in U.S. cinema, especially. And in this case, it was a lot of critics and journalists have pointed that out, that my films are often focus on marginalized groups. Yeah, I guess so. And whether it's a conscious choice, it's in the way that I just want to. I feel as if more stories that are told about marginalized communities and subcultures, minorities, the less marginalized they will be. That's the way I'm looking at it now, I think.
Yeah, I just also want to add, if I can, that this is happening all everywhere, in every city, every town. There was something to me that just struck a chord, that it was happening in the shadow of Cinderella Castle, the most magical place on earth. It just kind of tugged on my heartstrings and felt right to do it there.
So it also brings a huge amount of responsibility to portray these people accurately and compassionately. So I'm assuming you went through a really long period of research. So could you talk about that a little bit, all three of you, how you brought such realness to all these characters and children?
Well, Sam wasn't really part of that process. Mm-hmm. This goes all the way back to 2011 when Chris brought this topic to my attention. So this was pre-Tangerine, but I think this whole approach to this type of filmmaking actually goes back to Prince of Broadway. Prince of Broadway is a film I made before Starlet, and it's a New York film. It's about the wholesale district down, which is now very much changed, but that little strip of Broadway between 25th and 29th Street, and where counterfeit goods were sold either on the street or in the back rooms. And I was intrigued by this area, but I knew very little about it. It was one of those areas that I saw as a director. I saw this is eye and ear candy. I want to make a film that takes place on this strip of Broadway, but I knew nothing about it. I was an outsider. So we had to work our way in, and Victoria Tate, who is actually in Prince of Broadway and an associate producer on the film, we spent the time just almost a year. It was actually out of all of the films. It took over a year. It took over a year because we were working with we were approaching undocumented immigrants, and they were fearful, obviously, thinking that at first we were police, or just after a while they just thought we were annoying film students, and we were just like, no, we're feature filmmakers, seriously, this is a real project. And we approached it in a journalistic way. We invited men out to sit down with us for coffee, and we would revisit the area once a week at least, and set up meetings. We learned about the African immigrant experience there, and the Lebanese immigrant experience there, and how they coexisted and worked together. This is something I really did not know about, but it was through these interviews that it started to happen. And I realized when it all came together the day that we met Prince Adu, who became the lead of the film, but he was hard to find. He was hard to track down. And people kept saying, once you find Prince, it'll be cool, because he wants to act. We found Prince. One day, he said, guys, I've been waiting for you, because I've been hearing about you two. And if you put me in your movie and make me the lead, I will open up this world to you. I'll show you what the African experience is like here in Manhattan. I will help you cast. I will help you find locations, but you just make me the lead. And we're just like, we walked away from that moment going, did that just happen? Because that guy is actually a leading man, has leading man qualities, and he seems so enthusiastic. And yes, he did. He helped in so many ways. He opened up his world to us. He helped us with research. He introduced us to people. He helped us find the little baby that's in the film through his connections. And we ended up making this film about almost a year later, once I actually raised enough money to do it. And that was looking, and then right after that experience, I realized this is an interesting approach to the way I want to do this, and it's the most respectful and responsible way. Instead of walking in there from out of this world saying, "Here's the story I'm going to tell." No, it was done through collaboration. It was done through finding somebody who wanted to their stories told and amplifying their voice to a certain degree, and we used that approach again. We didn't have, it wasn't so as intensive because it was a slightly different world, but our approach to the adult film industry with Starlet was done the same way. We went through adult performers and people in that industry and really did our research and found out what it was like to live in that world. And then Tangerine came about, and it was the same exact approach as Prince of Broadway. And Chris and I found Maya Taylor, who was our passport to that world. She was the one who had that enthusiasm. She wanted to participate, and so therefore, and we went into Tangerine not knowing what story we were going to tell. All we knew is that it was going to be something that took place on the corner of Highland and Santa Monica. Like literally, that was what we had. It was. We knew we wanted to shoot in Donut Time, which was, if anybody's seen Tangerine, it's where the climactic confrontation takes place. We knew that this was an infamous corner, sort of an unofficial red light district, but that's all we knew, and we had to learn, and we used the same approach as we did with Prince of Broadway. And then, so hopefully I've answered that question.
So then, who was your sort of prince, your way into the Florida project? Who opened the doors of this world and the Florida project for you?
We spoke to the whole community. So we were speaking to residents at these motels, we were speaking to the owners, we were speaking to managers of the motel, we were speaking to people who worked at the agencies, meaning the nonprofits who actually provided social services to the homeless in that area, and eventually some of the local government. So it was, but if you had to nail down one person, it would be the motel manager who really, I think in many ways, inspired the character of Bobby, who Willem Dafoe plays in the film. He was a wonderful gentleman who has been very supportive, and I'm not going to give his name because I'm not sure he wants us to, but he was the guy who basically said, okay, yeah, no, this story should be told. This is what these families are struggling with. Nobody knows about this, and I think that it's an important story to get out there. So.
And did Willem Dafoe spend time with this manager?
Do you remember the day we met him? How that was? Because we're just walking onto these places looking for collaborators or people that just want to talk to us, and actually producer Shiching So is here as well, and definitely a great help in that process, because it's good to have friendly faces like hers when there's two guys walking up, and he definitely was on guard. We met him with a baseball bat in his hands.
No, wait. Was it a baseball bat?
Yeah, right? Baseball bat. He walked out because we were lurking around the property,
my gosh.
and there were children playing.
I knew he had a drill. Okay, wow, yeah, you're right. You're right. I'm short-term memory loss.
Maybe, Alzheimer's is setting in. It could be a drill. But
No,
he
but
had a weapon.
Yeah.
Ready for action.
It didn't look good. Think about it. It was two guys our age with my little chihuahua walking onto a playground. It very much inspired the scene with the pedophile, if anybody's seen the movie. But it was like that. We turn around, there's this gentleman, he's looking at us like, what are you guys doing? And I was like, oh yeah, we're doing research for a movie, thanks. And then Chris goes, no, you better talk to him now. This doesn't look good. He brought us into the office. He started interrogating us. We realized, okay, this doesn't look good. We were talking about our film, and he goes, and this is a nice story for the New York film community, I think. He said, Andrew Garfield stayed here for a week. And I was like, oh no, did Ramin already make this movie? This is 99 Homes, isn't it? Oh no, because Ramin Barani and I are friends, and we make very similar movies. And I had not seen 99 Homes yet; it was still in post-production. And as soon as and he had done his research along Route 192 as well, and this gentleman was helpful to him as well. And so as soon as I dropped the name Ramin, he was like, "You guys are legit. It's okay." And we were actually in their office texting Ramin saying, "I'm here with," So it was when this guy dropped his the ice was broken and. The ice was broken.
And then he's inviting us to his home and
yes.
telling us stories.
Yes. So let's talk about casting. You have an amazing group of children, and most of them are first-time actors. And you were really instrumental in coaching them and getting them used to this world. So how did you first of all find them? Brooklyn Prince, Valeria Cotto, and Christopher Rivera, and then how did you help them navigate this huge experience?
Well, we had a local casting company, two agencies actually, doing local casting calls. I wanted to cast locally with the kids. It was very important to me because I didn't want to fly in Hollywood kids. I needed the accents to be right. So we looked at, I don't know how many kids, but a lot over the course of several major audition what's the word?
No, just casting sessions in the motels themselves.
Yeah, sometimes in the motels and sometimes in a local community center. And we said, your kids don't have to have any prior experience. We're just looking for great personas. Bring them on in. Brooklyn Prince happened to be in the database for a local casting company by the name of Crowdshot, and we hadn't seen her at first. We were getting a little worried. It was getting very close to production. Close, what I mean is about 2 months out, and we or a month and a half out, and I said I wasn't going to make this film unless we found the present day Spanky McFarlane. I mean, I was like adamant about that. I was like, and it's the same thing with Tangerine. I was like, I'm not going to make this film unless we secure Donut Time. And well, that was the caveat for that film, and the caveat for this one was like, we have to find Spanky. And then one day she just came in. It happened to be that she auditioned at the same time as Christopher because we were grouping kids together to see what their chemistry would be like. They blew us away within seconds. It was Christopher said, I got to get myself energized and psyched for this audition, and he got on the ground. He started doing push-ups, and then little Brooklyn started doing squats. So I was watching these two kids do a boot camp. And I was just like, this is amazing. They haven't even started auditioning, and they're already winning us over.
And then you knew that was the Spanky moment that you were looking for.
Yeah, can I add something? Actually, the day before, I was in LA, and he would send me tapes of the kids. And the day before, he called me, and he said, that's it. I can't find her. I can't find Mooney. It's done. Like, we're going to postpone the movie. And then the next day he called me and he was so excited. He said, I found her! This is the one! Like, she's amazing. And he sent me the tape, and she was Mooney.
And Shaun, when he knows, he knows. Like, you knew, we didn't even need to see anyone else. We were having so many kids come in, and we would just throw some improv lines at them, like, hey, there's some, older kids in the pool, but now you want to kick them out. Go. And, we saw a lot of great kids, but when it came down to it, some of them didn't have that sort of improv skill that Shaun, always is looking for.
Plus, we were just looking for literally like 4 extroverts, because I wanted those kids not to be shy or embarrassed about experimenting, and just to let them be free and be themselves in those audition room, in the audition room. And then, but getting closer to it, I was always falling back on okay, but if anything goes wrong, I can manipulate their performance with editing. I can do that. And Sam was like, no, you can't. It's not going to work. You're not going to be able to get those long takes you want to get, and those one shots where the kids are actually having real performance. And I was like, are you sure? And she was like, yeah. And I go, okay, come on as the acting coach. I need an acting coach for the kids.
Yeah. Well, originally, Shaun had also, the kids were 6. But originally, when he said he wanted to do this film, he told me that he wanted them to be 4 and the craziest kids he could find. And that scared me a lot, because I was like, I don't know if this is possible. But no, they're great. I mean, they're extroverts, but at the same time, they're all really sensitive kids, sensitive and smart. So what we did is, when they were finally cast, I had a few weeks of them to do workshops and things, and in those workshops, what I would do so that he could get his long takes was, I got them to create their relationships with each other, and then the scenes that we were going to do with them, especially the big scenes, I would get them to do those scenes in different ways. For instance, the scene where they're walking around and they give a tour, I would have them each give guided tours. I said, well, let's pretend we're in a museum. I want you to be in this museum. I want you to give, I said what was in the place, and I want you to give a tour. We would do this different times, or say, oh, I want you to say who lives in that room and who lives in that room. And so then by the time we were shooting, they were comfortable with the ideas and they knew what they were doing in each scene. I'd say, this is the one where you're going to give the tour. And so they'd say, okay. So that shooting, when it finally came time to shoot, they weren't confused in any way. They knew who they were. They knew what their relationship was. They knew their own character, and they knew the situation. Because the other thing, too, is in this film, when you're not shooting in order, and especially because there are certain themes that kids, we didn't want them to know about, we would just play with them, and each scene that they would do would almost be like a play exercise. So they were always having fun.
So I actually was going to ask about that, because there are obviously a lot of adult themes in the movie. There is insinuation of sex work, and there is profanity. So how did you kind of held their hands through that?
Well,
and you probably work with parents too to get their consent.
With the profanity, it was something that we said, you're only allowed to say these words when the camera is rolling. And we're very specific about it. When the camera is rolling, you can say these words. When the camera isn't, you cannot say it. This is not real life words. And we talked to the parents, and we made sure that, we made sure that those were the real rules. And they never swore anything outside of
very mature,
that.
respectful, intelligent kids that got it.
They had fun while they were doing it.
Yeah, they had a blast when they were doing it. And regarding the adult themes, yes, obviously it was all. They didn't know anything. They didn't know any of that. They were in the dark on that. But they're intelligent enough to know that someday they'll know it. Brooklyn is like, someday I'll understand this film completely.
Yeah, but for instance, all the bathtub scenes, we just had her playing in the bathtub.
Exactly.
We didn't say she heard it, you know what I mean? All of those scenes, all of that other stuff. Even the guy coming back and saying, you stole my bracelets and all this. We were just like, just color. Right. It's okay. And when he comes, just look.
The pedophile
and
scene.
We're usually with her too, as the audience. We're on Brooklyn's side, even though we see.
Exactly. We weren't really filling the audience in either, and playing with exactly how much she's aware of, how much she's absorbing, and putting the audience in that place, that same place. Like, I'm not sure exactly what's going on. I don't have all the details. so that was a balance the entire time. But that's more like stylistically. There was just, but being on set, it was. I don't think the kids really, for example, the pedophile scene, they were basically just having fun on the playground, and then they saw Willem walk away with this gentleman. That was what they saw. That's what they knew. Yeah.
And then they kept on playing.
So what was it like to have on one side a professional, 2-time Academy Award nominee, Willem Dafoe, and then a group of non-professionals? I mean, was that challenging in any way to?
I always mix it up. I had on Tangerine. You had James Ransone playing Chester with Maya and Kiki, who were first timers, and I just, it's an interesting chemistry that happens, and I actually enjoy it. And if you find the right actors to do that, I mean, James Ransone, Willem Dafoe, they're both great guys. They're both patient, kind, giving guys who actually understood. They were in that place at one time. So I think Willem in many ways, and I've heard this just recently, I didn't even know this, quite honestly, that Willem was giving little words of advice to Bria, but not in a lecturing type of way, just like a casual giving her some confidence, because, think about it, Bria, I'm talking about the mother of the child.
Haley.
Haley, played by Bria Venate. She was, I discovered her on Instagram, that's how I cast her, and so she had no prior acting experience. She was 100% green, but she was enthusiastic. She was motivated. She wanted to get to that place. She knew Willem was coming to town one of these days, but we had a month. And actually, to tell you the truth, Sam also worked with her and Mela. And really, you want to talk about working with Bria?
Yeah. Well, she said she came, the first day she came and I was working with her privately every day. And I said, don't worry. She was so scared. She was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm so scared. And I was like, don't worry. We got you. Because she was willing to work really hard, and she's a really nice girl, and she's very, very smart. And there are certain things that Bria brought to the role of Haley that you actually can't teach. Her own experiences with life, her own personality. There were things that I would ask her questions, and we'd work through things, and then I'd just say, just do what you're doing. Because the way she would hold, there are certain things, the way she would hold herself, the way she thought about that world, all of her instincts and the person that she is, her answers were clear and specific and right. And I think that if you took someone else and tried to put them in that mold, they would have to work really hard to figure out certain things. But with her, where she came from and how she saw the world, we're really lucky.
Yeah, as Willem said, she probably had parallel experiences, meaning she grew up with a single mom. She came over from Lithuania at 8 years old. She's had to, she's rebellious. She has the physicality, her tattoos, she has that swagger. So she didn't have, of course, lived the life of Haley in any way, shape, or form, but I think that there were elements of Haley's character that she was able to identify with and use that to help her get to that place.
Yeah, 'cause Bria's a feisty girl, and I remember in the beginning I was talking to her about Haley's character, and she's like, oh no, I get it. And I was like, okay, good. And I think she brought such a freshness to it, and she wasn't afraid of playing the character in a way, a very human way, and she wasn't afraid of anyone's judgment. She was just like, this is it, and she did. I was so proud of her. And
she was definitely
really
holding her own
Yeah.
in front of Willem Dafoe.
Can I have a follow-up question to Mr. Baker on Bria with Haley? It's just, we when we were writing the script, we didn't have anyone in particular in mind for the role of Haley, but the mom existed ever since the beginning, and we were always throwing out names of A-listers. And what I've always wanted to know is, when you discovered Bria on Instagram, how do you know? How do you have the confidence to give a first-timer that shot instead of an A-lister?
Well, we didn't totally know. We had to audition her, but the thing is that there was something that I kept going back. We of course, this movie cost money to make. There's a responsibility to my financiers to at least, the way that as you know, this industry works. Audiences are sometimes they look for people they recognize. There's a box office draw, right? So we, of course, were entertaining a bunch of names. You can imagine the names we were talking about. Young women between the ages of 20 and 24 who are big in Hollywood right now. So we were discussing all those names, but I just kept going back to Bria's Instagram page, going, but no one's going to be as fresh as this one. And also the character of Haley, because of her struggles, and I felt that we needed somebody fresh in that role, meaning a newcomer, because I needed that suspension of disbelief to kick in immediately with this character, and I was of course okay with casting Bobby with somebody recognizable and established, but something was telling me that if I did that with Haley, I would mess up the whole movie, and so I asked it was a hard day. It was a hard day where I had to actually ask my wonderful financiers, June Pictures, can we give this girl a shot? And they were just like, ooh. Okay, all right, we trust you. We trust you because I thank God I had Tangerine, in which we had a lot of unconventional casting, and I hopefully it worked. I don't know. It's hard to talk about my own movie that way, but I think it worked. So I love Maya and Kiki and Tangerine. I think it worked. So I think that's what gave me the liberty to do it here, and that's how they trusted me. So we flew her down to Orlando, and she read with the kids, and I said, don't think. I know you already know the story. Do not think mom-daughter, think sister. I want a sibling-like relationship between you two, because Haley was such a young mom. She was 15 when she had Mooney. She never had the chance to grow up. She was a kid having a kid. I want your relationship to be like a sister-type relationship. And I saw that immediately. Like the two of them just bonding within minutes, and Brooklyn sitting on Bria's lap, and they were singing like top 40 songs, and I was just like, okay, we got it. So
thank you.
I want to ask you about the look of the film, but going back to Tangerine, that was, as a shorthand known as the iPhone movie, although I'm sure a lot more went into it, and then this you shot on film, but I still feel like they share some visual kinship. There's a heightened sense of colors. Can you open that up a little bit?
Well, sure. We tried to shoot Tangerine, even though we were using the iPhone medium. We tried to shoot it as cinematically as possible, almost as if it is close, trying to almost capture a filmic quality. We even used an app called Filmic Pro, and so we, is the question why we jumped to 35 or
that's part of the question.
Okay.
Why was it important this time around that you want to do 35?
Many reasons. It's hard also in the position I'm in because of the fact that shooting on the iPhone actually got a lot of attention in a positive way. To this day we get messages on our social media, Twitter and Facebook, from filmmakers around the world saying, this has really inspired me, this is helping democratize filmmaking. And this is exactly what I felt with the Dogma 95 movement. And Shi-Ching Zhou, who's here in the audience, the producer one of the producers on the Florida Project, we directed Takeout together because of the Dogma 95 movement, because it gave us the liberty. It said, you can now shoot on standard definition mini DV tape, and you'll be taken seriously by critics and film goers. And so when I hear that from people reacting in reactions to Tangerine, I'm like, oh, this is special. This is passing it along in a weird way. But then, of course, we are living in an age when the death of film is a real thing. It's a real threat, and I am in love with film. It's what creates celluloid. I'm talking about. It's what created this art form, and to say goodbye to that medium would be blasphemy. And to me, it would be the end of film, of cinema, that is. And so I feel I'm in the position. I got money to make this movie. I'm going to support Kodak, keeping film alive, and but I'm not poo-pooing the iPhone. I'm saying that all mediums are good. You can find beauty in digital. You can find beauty in film. It's a project by project basis. The reason I chose film for this project is because I wanted that organic quality Again, I wanted to help keep film alive, preservation purposes. There's so many reasons. I mean, I'm with Nolan on Christopher Nolan all the way on this. So anyway, hopefully I answered. And I shot with Alexis Zabe, who was experienced with 35. Alexis is an amazing DP. You know, I'm honored to have worked with the guy. And if you haven't seen the films he shot for Carlos Regadas, Silent Light and Post Tenebrae Lux, I highly suggest you do. They're gorgeous. And so, yeah, I hope I answered that question. It's a tough one. It's a big discussion, you know.
No, you did, and it's always great to see, you know, an independently financed movie to be shot on film, because there's this misperception that it's expensive, we cannot put it in our budget, and then there are ways to do it, and I would think that it probably brought a sense of discipline to the set that
Discipline
you have to.
Everyone said, but you're working with kids and 35, isn't that a headache? But actually, to tell you the truth, in hindsight, I actually think it helped. It gave us that discipline. We were telling the kids, you better, hey kids, here we go. You hear that? That's the sprockets, the films are good, you know, that's, the film is going through, you know, that's money being burned right there. We better get, you know, bring your game
You're right.
face, yeah.
So we're gonna open it up for some questions.
I know Disney is kind of like notorious or protective of their brand and whatever Mickey Mouse represents, but was there any interference at any point, or is there any sort of pushback from them, or if you could talk about the ways you worked around that?
All I can say is we returned to our guerrilla roots with that one. We shot the last sequence on the iPhone, and
Success plus on that one.
yes, shooting clandestinely. You know, I just want to obviously just point out the fact that for the people who haven't seen this film, and I think people might get the perception sometimes, but we're not pointing fingers. We're not being disparaging to Disney. Actually, to tell you the truth, in events like this, in Q&As, in interviews, I'd like to emphasize that being in that community, everyone is truly working to help eradicate the homeless situation in that area. I mean, you know, we went in there thinking, let's look at how the corporation has caused this, but it's not true. The recession is what caused this, the recession of '08 and the housing crisis that followed. And to tell you the truth, the local government is working directly with agencies, directly with philanthropists, and Disney. You know, Disney gave a charitable donation of $500,000 last year to the Homeless Impact Fund, which is, you know, helping Central Florida. So again, it's not about that. Yeah, that's all I want to say about that.
And just to follow that up quickly, are you thinking about showing this film to any policymakers?
Yeah, we're working actually with PR Collaborative in DC. We're trying to get the film in front of Congress. We're having a congressional screening. And also organizations that can help as well, you know, Human Rights Watch, etc. So that's that's very important, and as the film rolls out, we'll be doing that.
Great. Here, second row.
Thank you. Hi, this is a question for Chris and for Shaun. What works best for y'all in terms of writing and completing a script?
What works best? Wow. Well,
Research. It all starts with the research. This was 2 years of, not steady 2 years, but on and off, making research trips down to Orlando and just immersing ourselves in the environment and just listening, you know, soaking up as many stories from, like Shaun said earlier, tenants and managers, and just sort of, we want to write from inside the worlds of the stories that we're telling stories about instead of outsiders.
And then just as a way that we work together, it's just about being open to one another's ideas, you know? I mean, often, you know, as filmmakers, we think we have this is our vision, and I don't want to hear anybody else, but as a collaborator, I look to Chris. I think we come from different places in terms of our sensibility to a certain. I think our sensibility is the same, but to tell you the truth,
I grew up making movies that were copies of Indiana Jones and Star Wars and Back to the Future. Whereas,
well, me too.
Okay,
But
Die Hard for you, right? Die
I
Hard.
think that yeah, your interest lies in sometimes very mainstream Hollywood fare, and mine perhaps is on the other side of the spectrum, and we meet in the middle. And I think that that's an interesting mix, and I want to keep myself open to that, thinking that way, because that is the way to reach a greater audience. Mainstream sensibility. So the Hollywood, and so there are lots of things, for example, that he would think of that I never would have thought of, and vice versa. And I think that, for example, oh my God, I don't want to spoilers.
Well, let me say one other thing that's very important for me to stress is there's no bad ideas, because sometimes we're writing and I'll throw out ridiculous shit that is just like, he's like, no, we can't do that, but it could spark something that we can do, and vice versa, I think. And that's really cool. And also on set, we're always evolving the story, which is another really cool thing about working with Shaun that I love, is that it's not just we write the script and then they go shoot it. We're evolving it right until the cameras are rolling, which is so cool. We'll come up with some last minute left turns and curveballs right on the set that we'd like to try, that Shaun's always open to. And it's a really cool process, I think, working on it.
And then keeping it going in post-production. I edit my own films, but I'm showing him rough cuts along the way. And this might be a spoiler, I'm sorry, but it's an example I want to throw out. The end of the film, we start the film, it opens with Kool and the Gang's celebration. That's how we open the film. No more music for the rest of the movie. From the very beginning, we were said there was going to be no score. As I was editing and getting closer and closer to this ending, I was thinking we were going to approach the ending with a wall of sound and using location sound to wrap up this end. And he was the one who said, no, I think you need something more there. And I said, well, what? And he's like, orchestrate celebration. It's time to orchestrate it. It's trying, we need to hear a big orchestral version of this. And I never would have thought of that. But having my co-writer there, even in post-production, it happened, and I think I can't imagine the film without that now. So. But
right back at you, that thought came because of what I don't want to talk too much about it, especially to those who haven't seen the film, but your approach to the ending and some of the things you were saying about how you looked at the ending sort of informed that idea of, well, why don't we do something that we haven't done in the rest of the film with score?
Unfortunately, that's all we have time for.
Sorry, guys. We rambled.
Thank you so much for coming, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The film opens October 6th. Spread the word.
Friday.